All right. It says we're recording. I'll maybe with the help of your cousin, I'll figure out how to keep this going somehow. All right. Welcome. This is Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine. I am joined by a special guest, special friend, Jimmy Bethke out of Utah. How you doing,
Yeah,
Jimmy?
doing well. Excited to do this.
All right. So hopefully this will go the way I was hoping it would go, but we had some technical difficulties. But luckily, Jimmy has a cousin who works for Zoom who may be able to save my hide later on. All right. Anyway, just want to spend a few minutes with you, Jimmy. One of the things that's concerned me about all of the situation that's going on about this COVID-19 pandemic is the effect that it's had on education, public, private, everything along the line. I mean, you are a charter school teacher, first years, I believe that's what you told me, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So what's going on in Utah with education, whether or not it's public or private at this point?
Yeah. Well, so it's definitely progressed. It kind of all just this is a side topic, but it kind of all just happened right after we had our baby. So it's been kind of nice for me because I've been getting like 10 weeks of paternity paid leave now to just stay at home and hang out with my baby. But um, maybe the second week into March, we got the first announcement from the governor that schools will have a soft closure for 2 weeks. And after those 2 weeks were up, we got another update from the governor saying that we should be closing through May 1st. So that's a Friday. And yeah, so it's just we've been closed. Soft closure, meaning the students can't come in. With faculty, we can still go in and work from our classrooms if we want to. And everything has shifted to an online platform.
All right. So with the online platform, here's a concern of mine, at least locally. I mean, you pretty much grew up in Montgomery County, went to the public school system there, so you're pretty familiar with it. But what's happening in Montgomery County is not unusual for what I have been hearing happening in other states. I didn't look at Utah to see if Utah is having the same issue or problems. I mean, so in Montgomery County, and maybe even through the state of Maryland, I didn't think about it until just now. But one of the problems that has been going on is that there's been this question of, quote, equity, that not all the students had access to a computer or the internet. It's one thing if you go to classrooms, you have access to a school and a classroom. You can walk, you get dropped off by your parents, you get bussed in or whatever. That you have access, and there are taxpayer dollars that go for public schools. There's allocations for charter schools and things like that. But in the case of this unprecedented shutdown, and Maryland, I don't know where Montgomery County is in terms of where we are in terms of when the deadline is, but I think it's sometime in May as well in terms of the closure, and they haven't made a decision about closing for the rest of the year at this point. But what winds up happening is that the students are supposed to be in theoretical online learning situations, but because of the equity issue, there has been a thing going on that says, well, we can't really have we can't have classes that count for anything. I mean, we can't give you a lesson that actually you're going to get a grade or a score for, because not everybody has equal access. I think they've been trying to get the students, assign them computers and things like that, and trying to find a way to get them hotspots. I mean, I know this situation happened in Seattle area, the heartbeat, just the heart of where Amazon is and everything like that. It shows that, school systems were not prepared for this. I mean, I don't know if you could have been prepared for something like this, but everybody, I think, got caught flat-footed. And what happens? I mean, what's happening in your charter school? I mean, charter schools are different than public schools in a lot of ways. But have you seen that same situation? I mean, are you guys teaching and giving credit and grades at this point?
Yeah. So I mean, that's the big question. So because as a teacher, right, I can put things online and I can create lessons, or I can provide links to videos that help teach a concept, and I can create assignments or post assignments. But that first week of the soft closure, I had maybe um, 20 students that I heard a response from. And that seems low. I am at a charter school where my average class size is about 20. So I teach around 150 students. So we're talking, I don't know, not maybe 15% of my students. And then after second week, another handful of students started handing things in. And at this point, I've had close to about 80% of my students hand work in, or I've gotten response from parents. Um, and for them, you can do something with, right? Because there's a back and forth, there's some kind of communication with. But then there's the 20% that I've I've tried messaging them through Canvas, which is our online platform, which they already used throughout the year. I've tried messaging parents, but no response. There is that question of equity of what's really fair, because if you look at some of the households, you might have 4 or 5 kids in a household and one computer. Okay, so if each kid then has 30 minutes for each of their class that they have to do, and there's 6 classes, you're talking upwards to 3 hours per kid. And then what if the dad has to use, or the mom, whoever is the breadwinner, has to use the computer for their job to bring income in? Well, what's the priority? The parents bringing the income, or the kids in their soft closure learning where it's kind of watered down? And so, I mean, that's the question. I think that, luckily it's not really my responsibility to say they earn a credit or they don't earn a credit. That's going to end up more with administration, with counseling, and things like that. But I foresee a lot of incompletes, or maybe they will grant them a credit based on what their grades were through the first 3 quarters of the year. Not sure.
Yeah, I mean, does your school have a policy like a lot of public schools where kids are assigned a computer for the year or whatever?
Yeah, so we're pretty lucky. All of our high school students are given an iPad at the beginning of the year. And throughout the year, I've always made my assignments available to either hand in through paper or online. So for a lot of my students, it was an easy transition of just, oh, well, I've always handed in my stuff through online. So the actual handing of assignments hasn't been the obstacle. Um, but then like the learning in itself is an obstacle. You go through, I don't know, 5 months of a learning style for a specific teacher, and then it's all of a sudden, okay, we have to shift everything. And it's something that nobody signed up for, right? It's not something the parents signed up for. It's not something the kids signed up for. It's not something the teachers signed up for, or were necessarily trained or have a background in performing adequately in. So
Yeah, and that's a really good point too, because that's one of the other things. And as I've been talking with other people here in the area, is just that there's so many facets, there's so many things that are going on here with regard to teaching. I mean, I obviously, as you know, I don't have any school age kids anymore, except for Stephen theoretically is still taking courses online, but beyond that, they're out of school, they're raising families or whatever, and stuff like that. But while we've got a problem here, I think partially too of students not engaging and not being motivated to respond. You're seeing, something, it's been a slow climb up for you,
yeah.
on that end. And then we also have the teachers. That was not part of their training. They really, no one anticipated this. And no one could have anticipated this, as I've said before. But now all of a sudden, you're forced into an online environment. This is a weird environment for everybody, for the students and for the teachers. I have this one guy here that does the show with me on Tuesdays. He's at Virginia Tech. He's in his freshman year. He's trying to wrap that up. He's in a better situation, I think, on the college level. College professors, for the most part, there are a lot of them that are used to doing online lectures and doing that. But as you move down into the K through 12 area, that is not an area. I have a friend of mine I think she's kindergarten, and she's posting stuff on Facebook about how she's preparing these lessons, for kindergarten online. I'm thinking, like, kindergarten online? What is the attention span?
Yeah. No, and I've been counseled by my administration, 20-minute lessons. Like if I would have had them 3 days that week, then give them an hour's worth of stuff. And that includes the learning and the actual assignment. We're talking bare, dry bones stuff. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
because
20 minutes, you might just be getting started.
yeah, I mean that's what it takes to understand. And I teach math, right? So that's the one that where everyone's like, "Oh, I'm not a math person," or "This stuff doesn't make any sense to me, anyways."
Oh man, 20 minutes of math. I mean, for one thing, 20 minutes of math for me would have been torture. The idea of going an hour's worth of math, but I would have probably needed that in order to try to figure out the concept and everything for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been interesting. We are lucky with our school that we did all have iPads moving forward, but I mean that's not the case for everyone. I mean we're a charter school, so we have that luxury, but that's not the case with uh, the public schools by any means. So
Yeah, I mean, what are you seeing in Utah is the outlook for this? I mean, I don't think, as I recall, the governor doesn't have an official kind of stay at home. I think they strongly recommended it. Uh,
yeah,
so, and I think most Utahns are following it, but not everybody. I mean, even the stay at home in Maryland, not everybody's following it. So,
yeah, he did come out with something, I believe, this last weekend where he put a stronger emphasis on stay at home, don't do your Sunday family dinners, like only be with the people who are in your household, unless you are an essential worker and you need to go out. Um, but I mean, I'm also working on my master's at UVU, and I'm just finishing this spring semester is my first year, and I have 1 year left. And I got a message this last week that all of our summer classes, they're already all just scheduled to be online, and those don't start until June. So if that's the outlook of all summer classes not even starting until June are online, I don't really foresee us going back to school for the rest of this school year.
yeah, I mean, I find it to be extremely hard, no matter where you are in the country, for any school system that has not canceled the school year in terms of in class for the rest of the school year, to see them going forward. Because, I mean, we're in what, April 9th, and we pretty much know, I think in Maryland, that maybe they could, we may be past a lot of this and we could possibly look at it, but you have to gear things back up and do at that point in time. You know what a senior year of high school is like. Seniors are already checking out in early May. So,
Yeah,
and then the rest of the school year, the last month, even if you're an underclassman, not a whole lot's going on. You're kind of preparing for the end of the year. Maryland, at least, in Montgomery County, the schools in Maryland are mandated to have 180 instructional days. So they do that. But, anybody who's been to school in Montgomery County knows that particularly those last week or two,
yeah,
what are you doing? Watching movies, and
yeah,
you're there, but you're not learning anything.
yeah. And I mean, without getting too specific into names or anything, I have a senior class, and those seniors need that math credit to graduate. And that by far is the class where I've had the lowest response rate from. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen when push comes to shove? I don't know.
Yeah, you see, and what I'm interested in too is that the effect on the students. Teenagers are teenagers. I mean, you were a teenager. I was, and not all that long ago. Much closer than I was, and but the thing is that they think about a lot of things, but they don't necessarily think always about the long-term effect about this. This is something brand new to them. It's brand new to most of their parents in terms of trying to deal with this. But I do get concerned about the loss of classroom time with these students, because you have spent, was it 2/3 of the year or 3/4 of the year, whatever you've taught them. You have, when you plan the year, you're planning based on what you normally would do, and say, at this point in time we're going to go this and do this. And like in Montgomery County, there's going to be time I think they spend to prepare for the tests that have to be done and things like that. And so that's kind of out the window. That there's probably no testing of that that's going to go on. But how this affects them academically for the learning that they lose, I don't think a lot of them have figured that out yet. Have thought, some of them probably think, hey, this is great. I'll go to class when I want to go to class. We're going to do all these things. I'll be at home or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they don't realize the potential academic effect it has, especially for those that are juniors and seniors, the ones that need to prepare for the senior year, that'll eventually have to take an ACT or an SAT or whatever, and those your seniors that are moving on, that are going to go to college. They're going to be not only just the credits they need to graduate, but just also that intrinsic learning that could help them as they move on to college.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and just quickly to address the state testing, we've already canceled our state testing, so I mean that's thrown out the window. Whether it's in ACT testing as well, because our school helps fund that for our juniors, that's canceled, and I think nationally, this is just off of what I heard, but like that colleges are going to kind of ignore ACT, SAT testing for this past year. Um, but you'd have to fact check me on that. But yeah, and again, it's not something that anybody necessarily signed up for, and we're switching the teaching style, because even just the response rate, right? Because you could have them in a classroom and you could be explaining something, and a question pops up in the kid's head. They have that immediate response to be able to ask that question. They have that chance to resolve that issue within that quick time span, right? I can provide the same lesson, throw it on a video, have them watch the video. Okay, well now there's this back and forth. They have to message me. I have to be looking at it at the same time that they're messaging me, or to really quick and be effective within that time span. Because like you said, I mean, everyone has their time span that they can kind of, attention span that they can spend focusing on a certain area. And just with the communication, it's not like I can immediately respond to everybody's questions, and resolve any conflicts immediately. And then by the time I do get back to it, who knows if that's still on their radar, or if they even remember the question they were asking me in the first place.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so many ramifications to this. It's mind-boggling to me. And, I mean, this affects education. I mean, it affects all aspects of our lives in terms of everything that has been going on. I don't know that, I'm pretty sure life will really never be the same, as a result of this. I'm I'm going to be curious as to the effect on education, public, private, whether, colleges, universities, and things like that. In terms of what this does. I mean, say for example, we get by this, which we will get by. I am confident of that we are reaching a point where things will be able to not have to shelter in place and things like that. We'll be able to go out in public. But one of my questions with anything that we are doing now, with all the things, when you look at education, classrooms, there are 20, 30, 40, 50 desks and chairs in a room. Is that going to be the case going forward? Are there going to be people, where the parents even said, I am not putting my son or daughter in that classroom unless you give them more spacing? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've thought about it from a church standpoint. I've thought of, just all these things. I mean, we're seeing the grocery stores, people, how long does that distancing take effect? Will that stay in the minds of people longer term? That, where is that point where people start to get used to the fact that, classroom teaching means you're going to be in the classroom. Are we going to wind up being mandated where we're going to have 10 or 15 students, or all that's allowed in a classroom, from now on? I don't know.
Yeah, I think one effect that I can almost guarantee is that within any college curriculum in preparation for education and preparing teachers, there's going to be some kind of online learning course where it teaches future teachers how to effectively create an online course. And I wouldn't be surprised if I foresaw trainings done by administration in the beginning of school years saying, this is how you set up your courses online. This is how you can effectively give back feedback to students online, or, just little workshops that prepare us for the next outbreak, right? Because we're going through Corona now. What happens in a year or two when another crazy sickness comes out? We'll probably take it more seriously from the get-go. And I don't know, maybe we shift to online. I don't know. I don't know what the timetable would be for how quickly we react to a future virus, and just say, oh, well, we're prepared for this now. Let's shift everything to online.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, this has been kind of a tough call here because this virus apparently is very much it's flu-like, or I mean, if and so it affects people who've got you know, autoimmune disorders, of
Yeah.
where their immune systems have been compromised and things like that. Older people that naturally fall into that category and have become more high risk, that type of thing. So we already know that the flu, that we get it through when we go through the flu season, tens of thousands of people, lots of people die, lots of people get sick from the flu every year. We're not going to go to zero. I'm no scientist or whatever, epidemiologist, but we're never really going to go to zero on this. I think, coronavirus, this thing is going to be with us just to hopefully a smaller extent, one that we'll be able to figure out, once we get a vaccine going, they'll be able to kind of control. But we're never going to really be able to kind of say, we're going to zero deaths on this in any given period. We come up to the fall, once again, it percolates up again. But I think, you bring up an interesting point with I hadn't thought about the college universities teaching something or creating courses to teach online learning. My mind had been going that, particularly with colleges and universities who are already set up for a lot of online learning, and they kind of went in that direction for a little while, with their MOOCs, their massive, online courses, because they were getting kind of hit from behind by outfits that were basically providing, college level type of things, not necessarily with credit, but providing college level teaching for free or another kind of a fee. I think, like Georgia Tech a couple of years ago even had a master's program that they put into a MOOC, that type of a thing. I still think that the college university model is still susceptible to, where more online learning will take place by students. Maybe students will start demanding that, which hurts their model of how they survive long term. They have to kind of learn how to do that, though I think they've had some preparation. But there's a cottage industry potentially out there for what you're talking about, people to prepare for this and help teach them how to be good online instructors and look for all the different things going on. We're going to learn a lot from this experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and even, so my dad, right? And initially when I told him I wanted to be going to education, he was like, well, what about business, or right? And so he's always talking about that. And there's companies, uh, who need to teach. I don't know exactly what they would need to teach, but they have their curriculums, and that could be a valuable thing as well, to teach their employees online through different facets. Or I don't know, it's not solely just for education, but I do anticipate online teaching being a specified field, or at least a subcategory for the education field.
Yeah, and Stephen obviously very well. So for those that don't know, that's my youngest son, and so he has a job. He's living in South Jordan. He has a job with a company that does training for real estate agents. And we were talking with him the other day, or my wife was talking with him the other day, to find out how things are going, because job situations are very tenuous for a lot of people. Well, his role has, from the time he was hired, was that he's in charge of like video production and stuff like that. He says they've had a huge amount of influx of interest for these courses that they have, because you have to have these courses to get certified apparently in Utah to become a real estate agent. And apparently he's, how Stephen is. He's like, everybody and their brother basically thinks they can be a real estate agent. And he says they don't realize that maybe 10% of the people who actually go through with this can actually be successful at this, because it's work and you got to go through this process. So I guess he's sitting kind of in a catbird seat right now, because he's with a company that's like the premier real estate training company in Utah for agents. And people are like, I either don't have a job, I'm bored at home. Real estate sounds easy, like easy money. Let's go for it.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. It's crazy. I'm fortunate, right? I don't know if I should really divulge this, but like my working hours have decreased substantially, but I still am getting that same paycheck. And so
that's fine to divulge. Look, I've been working from home, and I didn't intend to do this for almost 3 years. So I collect the same paycheck I had before, but we don't have a physical office anymore. There's a workspace that basically uses a mail drop. But I collect the same salary and benefits as I did before. But I know, that I don't necessarily have to be in an office. As a result of that, the hours are kind of spread out throughout the day. I mean, I think when Spencer, who's also working for us, he's doing more now. So I think he's grumpier right now. But as a result of that, but initially when he decided to rejoin AIM, he was saying that he could do the most of his job in an hour and a half, but he was being paid for an 8-hour day in essence.
Yeah.
But he was doing what he was asked to do, right? So if that means fewer hours, that means fewer hours. But one of the side benefits from this is that there are no commuting costs, for us. I mean, I used to have an office that was 20 miles away, so I'm driving 40 miles a day, 5 days a week, back and forth and whatnot. I mean, I hardly go. Once I started working from home, didn't go to the gas station as much. Now we're forced to not really go out almost at all. So I'm not really. I posted on Facebook. I haven't been to the gas station for 28 days. It's insane. What we're going through.
Yeah.
I know your dad's got an office, but I don't know if your dad is actually going to his office.
He goes. He likes. I don't know. It works better for him.
Yeah.
And it's just a solo office, right? So I mean,
right. I think my wife wishes I would go to an office sometime. Right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, as we kind of wrap this thing up. We've had a good discussion here. What drove you to education? Because you mentioned how your father kind of questioned you a little bit about this. When you messaged me that you were doing this teaching, I have to admit, I was surprised. I had no clue you were doing this.
Yeah. I'm one of those stalwart believers in how important education is and how much of a difference it can make. So as you mentioned earlier, I grew up in Montgomery County. And I went to John F. Kennedy High School. And if you know Montgomery County very well, there's a certain demographic, and John F. Kennedy is on the opposite sides of that demographic.
Right.
And so I have lots of friends who are in different places right now. And in large part, it is due to their education and how seriously it was taken, or and how much of help they had, and how many different assets they had as part of their background to push them to work at something in education or see how important it is. And that's something that I was able to see firsthand. And combination of that, growing up in Maryland, highly democratic, and then going out to school in Utah, very much on the other end.
Yeah.
I see a lot of the silliness, right, from both ends, and I've really just wish that people would think for themselves, right? And I don't know. I just feel like there's so much that you can be empowered with as you take learning seriously, and I wanted to be part of that and help people to realize how much more in control of your life than you think you might be, and how learning can be a catalyst for that.
All right. So the other thing I want to ask you too about this is that you're teaching in a charter school. I mean, what kind of differences do you see as a teacher and being in a charter school versus, growing up, going through a public school?
Yeah. So it is a charter school and it's not a private school. So there isn't like a tuition per se. Students do pay about $80, and that's for use of the iPad mainly, that they can take home with them throughout the year, and just like other school fees. But then at the end of the 4 years, they get to keep their iPad. So I mean, the fees are very, very minimal. And I couldn't really tell you too much of a difference between what a charter school and a private school is. And I haven't really noticed much of a difference between charter and public, except for perhaps with creating curriculums and in some of the electives that we are able to offer. So
yeah, and I think that's been part of Maryland. It's really tough to get a charter approved for a school in Maryland. It's been difficult, though. I think I think Governor Hogan has tried to make that path easier, and I didn't check to see whether or not since he became a governor, whether or not we've actually seen charters where in the past we just couldn't get it done. But I think, with education, I think that you need to have options. That one size doesn't fit all. Public education works for some, and we definitely see the disparity in education. I mean, you went to Kennedy. When our family was living closer to your family, my kids were going to Kennedy as well, and and I think my children were rather shocked at what they saw at Kennedy in terms of that. They hadn't really experienced of that, because every time when you start off in elementary school, you go to middle school, you go to high school, you start getting bigger sample sizes of people, right? The feeders are becoming bigger and bigger population. So you start to see how the culture is a little bit more. And, Kennedy versus Churchill, huge difference, or BCC, right? And the opportunities that they have are very, very different. And it's unfortunate that we can't have a more stable, more equal opportunity. But this is where charters potentially have a way in. I know DC has a lot of charters, and there's a lot of fighting that goes on with the teachers union, in DC about the charters. But for the most part, the charters have succeeded because that the parents want it. PG County, I think that PG County's had some charters, but the demand has been so high they can't take in all the students they want, and things like that. And I wish here that the public school teachers, that are in these teachers unions understand that, like, the idea here is really I think if you're really interested in giving the best education to the kids, let these options go out there. I understand the argument about the taxpayer money going to this school, and you're saying, well, it's leaving my pot going to that pot. But if you're really truly interested in the education of the children and you want them to achieve, then you should welcome this. And in theory, I guess part of it too is that it should maybe motivate some of the teachers in public schools who may not be as motivated. I mean, not all teachers are created equal in public schools either, that maybe they say, oh, wait a minute, maybe we need to do things. Maybe the public education school system says, they're doing that, they're offering this, there's an interest in this subject or whatever, maybe we ought to think about incorporating that. It becomes a somewhat competitive model, but competition can be good. It can lift, that rising tide lifts all boats.
So yeah, and to go along with that, I guess one difference is that our charter doesn't belong to a district. So we pull in kids all the way up from American Fork down to Springville, which is about a 20-mile diameter. So I mean, we're not forced to get just kids from one section of Provo or one section of Orem, right? We can take kids from different cities, and they do have that option, like you were saying. It's not just well, my neighborhood feeds into this school, and so this is where I have to go. Students do have that choice.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that to me would be is just that if you're getting students from that wide radius, there shows there's a demand. There are parents who want it. They're willing to drive their kids or figure out a way to get their kids to your school, even though it's a fairly long drive. I mean, for a lot of parents, they're like, oh, a mile is too long for them to drive or something like that. It's like, hey, look, I mean, do you want to give your kids an educational opportunity, the best that you think you can give them? Then you make sacrifice.
Yeah, and we are small. So we are a K through 12, and I teach at the high school part of that. We're a couple of different facility buildings, but in my building is the middle school, high school building. And 9th through 12th, we have a student body of 300 kids. So we're incredibly small. But yeah.
That's probably even smaller than your graduating class, your senior class at Kennedy.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes it easy to learn everybody's name though, so that works for me.
Oh yeah, that's good too. I mean, I think that can be extremely helpful. If you're in those smaller environments and where the students and the students know you, it's not just this. I show up to class and kind of go through the motions. There's incentives. I know the teacher cares about me.
Yeah, no, there's so much research, substantial research that talks about the effectiveness of personalized learning and how much learning goes up in any given student when you incorporate their backgrounds, their diversity into your curriculum, right? So the more opportunities you have to get to know a student, the better, the more likely they are to be engaged in their learning, and the more effective the teaching is. So smaller class sizes point to more effective learning. So
All right. I think I've taken up more than enough of your time today. I appreciate the time. Now, all I have to do is figure out how to get this posted.
do you want me to give my cousin your email, or
Yeah, send him my email and my phone number, whatever, and then maybe he can walk me through this.
cool. Would you? Yeah. So just go ahead and text me the email you want me to
Okay,
send.
I will. I will do that. Thanks a lot, Jimmy, for joining me. That was it was great conversation. I really enjoyed it. It's good to see you after a while. So
Likewise.
good luck to you and the baby and everything like that. How old's the baby now?
He is 7 weeks tomorrow.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I know he's
Your
grown.
your parent. I was thinking about your parents. I think they're gonna be great grandparents.
Yeah, they were supposed to come out like a week or two ago, but
Oh goodness. Yeah.
now no.
I look. I mean, to be honest, I feel lucky that we were able to visit our grandkids at the beginning of March,
Uh-huh.
and we had several family things that happened at that time because we could theoretically go on the road. We always drive there anyway and go down there and do this. But in the sense of